don't ever be working on a plan B, because that just means that you suck at plan A.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee, it's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
Smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another ridiculous and unnecessary intro. Yeah, I just discovered that button on our thing. A William Lee Martin.
I'm Raelyn. This is JB, my co-host.
Hey, man. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you both.
Okay, so thanks for doing this with us, first of all. Don't be afraid to be silly and funny, and don't censor yourself and all those things. Gotta make sure I tell you guys that.
Terrific.
Okay, so we start off every podcast with asking you, what is the first music you remember loving as a kid?
Okay, are we starting now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Are you good with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to answer? Okay. I didn't know if y'all did an intro or anything else else.
We'll add that in post, as they
This
say.
is great so far,
Okay.
by the way.
Hang on just a second. Come on, girls. Come on. I got breaking and entering. Go. Come here. Bella. Go. Go. Thank you. Thanks, girls. My dogs know how to open doors. I'm sorry.
That's
It's like
cool.
Jurassic Park. My dogs know how to open the doors, so they know how to push down on the door. And if they ever got the opposable thumbs, they would kill my wife, and it would just be the three of us.
Then you can get some twist knobs and take care of that.
You would think. You would think.
Okay, so
Yeah. So,
what's the first
Go ahead.
music you remember loving as a kid?
I actually grew up in the church. So I started my entire show business career singing the Old Rugged Cross by myself on Sunday nights repeatedly, nearly every Sunday night. But as far as comedy music, I had an old album called 40 Funky Hits. I think it's by K-Tel. And they had a bunch of compilation songs on there. And but yeah, Jackson 5, sang to the Jackson 5 through a hairbrush, like every other stand-up comedian. I want to be a singer, and every singer wants to be a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so wait, you grew up in the church. I did too. But I didn't grow up inside the church building, but we were there quite a bit, like Wednesday nights, Sunday morning, Sunday night, then there were ministries we went and did during the week and all those things. So,
How old were you when you were singing, when you were performing in
this
church?
Old Rugged Cross song?
Probably 5, I think, as early as 5, that's really where that love really came from. My mother was a singer. She was a wonderful, she was our soloist in the church. And she probably would have tried to go be professional, but she had 4 kids by the time she was 26. Wow. So, kind of derailed her entire show business career. But she lived through going to church and singing, at all the big stuff, So they'd ask her to sing solos at, Easter and Christmas, all the big ones.
Like How Great Thou Art, all those old hymns.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I surrender all. Yeah. Amazing Grace.
What about your dad? What was he listening to?
My dad was a truck driver.
Okay.
So my dad was listening to your grandfather, I guess, but big country music fan. So, we grew up with country music, the old style country music, and really loved it. I was born in the late 60s. So I've been through it all.
What about your brothers and sisters? Are you the youngest, the oldest, in the middle?
I am. I'm the baby of the family. I have 2 brothers and a sister. And, we grew up in Blue Mound. I'm actually a 5th generation Texan. My family's actually been in Texas on my dad's side since Mexico gave away land grants to Anglos to come settle here. So we didn't steal it from anybody, but, we knew a guy.
So you say you were singing at 5. Did you, when you got into junior high or high school, did you ever sing in a band? Did you have any designs on doing that?
I was a drummer and a pretty good drummer. You know how you try out for band in 5th grade to see what you're going to play in 6th grade, the actual band.
Yep.
And I tried out, and I'd been playing drums since I was, little. I mean, 2 years old, beating on pots and pans and driving my parents crazy. And then, I was trying out and I wanted to play drums, and I tried out, and they came back and they said, this boy has no rhythm at all. That was the evaluation, and wanted me to play tuba. And, later on, you realize that it's because nobody's volunteering to play tuba, that he's got to say something to get kids to play tuba. Right. And I came home and I told my mom, I said, listen, I'm either going to play the drums or I won't play anything at all. And she stood by me, and I never left first chair from 6th grade through 12, and was the drum captain, and got a music scholarship playing drums at UTA. And but I stopped singing, I guess, in public really when I was 12 years old.
Gotcha. So when you're playing the drums, did you have design? Was it, I'm going to be a drummer in a band? Was that the goal?
I just, you did? No, I really didn't think that there was enough money in it. And,
you were smart.
I grew up in the family ties, Alex P. Keaton kind of world, right? That, there was no money in that. And so I thought I'd go into advertising. Advertising was my only into show business. So I wrote advertising for 9 years out of college and hated every stinking minute of it.
So what made you split and go well, let's back up. Who was your, I guess you mentioned comedy. Like, when did that come along? As a kid, were you into it? Were you always into comedy? Or was that something that came later? No, not really. I mean, I was a writer and I've been writing little songs and stuff, my entire life. And, but I was a writer. It was short stories and long story form. And then, like I said, I thought the only end really was advertising. I didn't think I was good looking enough to be an actor. I couldn't sing well enough to be a singer. I didn't think there was enough money in it to be a drummer. So I went into advertising, and I don't know if it's it's because I was now in a little cubicle, or if maybe I didn't work well with others. I know that was on my evaluation. Right. And so I one day we lost our job. We all lost our job. We got sold to another company. And I was 30 years old. I had been writing a book at night called Life Under the Neon Moon, Now That She's Gone and Took the Dog With Her, right, which read like stand up. And it was about divorce, but it's also about going out to these bars in, these in the early 90s, and the rules that I had, to ask women to dance and that kind of stuff. So it was funny. And everybody kept saying it read like stand up. And then I lost my job. And it was my grandmother who said, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. She said, go home and look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you happy? You're almost 30 years old and I never see you smile. And like I said, I did that, y'all, but I didn't. I went home and I stayed in the fetal position for 5.5 months. Wow. Would have been 6, but unemployment back then ran out in 5.5. And true story, the UPS driver comes next door, and I go next door to tell him I got fired. My neighbor was out of town. He wanted me to get the package, but I went over there with an objective to share my pity party with the guy in the brown shorts, right? I told him I was fired. I was going to make ends meet and all this other stuff. And he looked at me like, good, that's one less box I'll bring out of here, dude. And dejected, I went home and I looked in the mirror and I turned off the phone and the television, all the distractions of life. And I just asked myself, am I happy? And I knew the answer was no before I even asked. 4 hours later, I called my grandmother and I said, since I was 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be on stage and television, radio, and print. And she said, go for it. And I said, what if I lose the house? She said, buy you another one, boy. I said, I don't want you to be 30 or 50 or 80 and go through the would have, could have, or should have. And this from a woman that found out she had a tumor on her lung about the size of my fist and dying of lung cancer. That was it, man. I'd never been on, I'd never tried stand up, but I was watching a lot of stand up at the time. And I decided before I even tried it, that that's what I was going to do. I was going to go for it in this transition period of my life for comedy. And my first time on stage was May 17th, 1996. And here we are 26 years later. So how does the first time, I mean, it's pretty a complete right-hand turn. Like, I'm going to do comedy. So you're like, all right, now I'm going to be a comedian. What were your first steps? Or did you understand how it worked? I guess you'd been in advertising, but did you know about open mics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had a lot of stuff on, like there were documentaries about starting stand up and everything else. And I asked a couple of people, and they said, "Well, you got to get 5 minutes." And I already had this manuscript already of what read like stand up. So now it's just plucking 5 minutes off of it. And so I go to the open mic, and I had this whole thing planned. And my opening line was, "My name is Bill Martin, and I'm not going to sing to you. But ironically, my life has become a sad, sad country and Western song," right? Not a funny line, but the first line. So I go up, and it's an open mic. And back then, the open mic was getting a real audience. They were not just comics in the back. They were getting people. So it was like 80, 90 people, audience members in the audience. And I had to follow a headliner named Charles Brockman, and he just destroyed, right? And so I'd weasel my way into a gig on radio, doing a call-in 2 weeks before a set piece. Not weaseled, I mean, I worked it, but there were guys like Larry the Cable Guy and Roy D. Mercer and stuff. So I thought there would be an in that we could use this material that I have in the book. So they gave me a great intro. They're like, "This guy from KSCS." And nobody knew. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cowboy Bill Martin. And I go on stage, and I couldn't remember a thing. I couldn't remember my name. Okay. And Bill, it's not a made up name. I was going to go with a made up name, but now I'm going with my real name, right? And so I told him, I said, "I'm sorry, I'm a virgin at this. This is my first time." And they all clapped. They're like, "Oh, come on, buddy, you can do it," And I had it, and then I lost it again. And now I had flop sweat for the first time ever. You guys probably know what flop sweat, but a lot of people don't. That's this. It's just. It was a taste of salt dripping in through my mustache into my mouth like I had never tasted before, man. Nothing but panic.
What is this? What?
Flop sweat? Have you ever had flop sweat?
You don't sweat that much. So picture the first time you played. Remember the first time when you were freaked out? If you had perspiration coming down because of the way you were freaking out, I guess it would be like night sweats or
Night sweats.
What are you calling it?
Flop sweats, because flopping in front of people and freaking out, and your pores just open up.
Got you. All
yeah.
right.
So my first joke on stage turned out to be an ad lib. I go, "Wow, this is like being a virgin, because I've tried it twice and petered out kind of quick. Why don't we all hug as a group for 50 minutes and I'll try it again?" And they all laughed. And then I went, "My name is Bill Martin," and I'm like, and then I hit the line. And then I was getting into it, and the jokes were really working. They really were working. And I'd memorized everything, but I hadn't accounted that there would need so much space for the laughter. And so now it took me a little long to get started, and I'm going long. And in the back, they're giving me the light, which you guys know that means wrap it up, get it off, right?
Yep.
Well, I don't even know, man. This is how unfamiliar I am with anything. I just think the guys in the back going, "Keep going, man. You're a rock star. Keep going." So I came off stage, and the club owner, he's like, "That was probably the best first set I've ever seen anybody have in this club. But know that the light means wrap it up." And then I got home, and I looked in that same mirror, man, and I just knew this is what I wanted to do.
Wow. So good first night. So
How many people were there?
90, I think.
Yeah, about 90.
Okay.
About 90 is, yeah.
That's a big first night. Usually we've talked to enough comedians to know there's generally a bunch of other comedians with their arms crossed, not laughing at anything, just working on their material, waiting to get their time.
Yeah, I really came at a good point. And I know, now there's a lot of rule changes, and now you got to go through a comedy class in some of the comedy clubs to even get up. And I didn't do any of that stuff. I just, but I went from open mic to headlining in like less than 2 years.
Wow.
And then in 2.5 years, almost my third year anniversary, I was opening for George Strait. As a matter of fact, the anniversary was just 2 days of it. I was opening for George Strait in San Antonio, at the Alamo Dome, hosting the Straight Fest, and it had Leanne Rhymes on it, Mark Chestnut.
Wow.
It had Leanne Womack, and she was the noon act. Remember, the Straight Fest used to have 12 acts on there, so George wouldn't go on till 9, and Leanne and I went on at noon with nobody there. But I went in between each one. Yeah. So, but it was the same night that Princess Diana died, and that's why I know that's 25 years ago, 2 nights ago. Yeah.
Wow, that's a trip. So that's a pretty meteoric rise. But what was the 2.5 years like that previous to that? Were you hitting the road? Were you opening for people?
Oh yeah, I hit the road. Lost a house and a truck. I talk about it now in the act. The house, I was not prepared. I was prepared for the house to be repossessed because I couldn't hide it. Right. And there's a lot of people who are listening right now. It's like, mine's on wheels, bitch. I get it. But mine wasn't. Mine had a foundation. But the truck, it got repossessed that first Christmas. Repossessed on Christmas Day, man. The only day that I left it out was Christmas. I'm like, nobody's going to repossess a truck on Christmas. Ford did.
Wow. So what gave you the impetus to keep going through that? Because most people, when that starts happening, they got to be like, fuck, I got to find something else to do here. I'm going to lose everything.
Yeah, it's a couple of reasons. One, my grandmother dying, and she was one of my best friends. I'd also read a book by Les Brown, the motivational speaker, called "Live Your Dreams," and then I also heard these stories of Vikings. Vikings used to pull up to a country, and they would get everybody off the boat, and then they would set fire to the boat. So you either died or you conquered, but you didn't retreat. Wow. So I knew that and I still tell my kids today, don't be working on a plan B, because that just means that you suck at plan A.
I'm going to do that to you guys. I'm going to set the van on fire when we get to our next gig.
Just
like
the
this
van
is
on
it,
fire.
You guys. So Vikings.
So what era, or like kind of roughly what years were those 2 years?
1996, 1997, 1998.
So that was pretty much during the era of just getting out and banging out on clubs. You can't, that was the only thing you had to do, is either be on TV or hit the clubs.
Yeah, and these were doing a lot of, shitty one-nighters and traveling everywhere. But the great thing, like I said, I didn't like advertising, but what I found was that I was at an advantage than anybody else, because I knew how to do a press release. I knew how to contact radio and newspapers. Back then, newspapers were still the thing. There was not even a MySpace at that point. There was not really an internet or social media kind of thing, but I knew how to do traditional advertising with advertisers. And that helped me have some push, some business sense. And I've always treated this as a business. And that's what I'm surprised at, is the number of people who get in this business who don't read the whole name. It's show business, and show's the smallest part of the word. So it's really the business that'll eat you up if you don't have your shit together.
Yeah.
So what got you the gig during the Street Fest? Like, how did you 2.5 years, how did you hook up with Clint Black? Is that what it was?
George Strait.
George Strait. How did you get that gig? Did he see you somewhere, or did?
Well, a couple of things. One, I started opening for some country artists here in Fort Worth. The first one I ever opened for was the late great Gary Stewart.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you how the first one. It's always weird, comedians opening up for musicians. How did the first one go?
Well, I opened for Gary Stewart at a street dance here in Fort Worth. And, Gary Stewart was a legend here in Fort Worth, probably the greatest honky-tonk singer ever. She's acting single, I'm drinking doubles, empty glass. I mean, the list goes on and on. So this crowd's already pumped for him. And with country artists, they're very open to the thing. They're very open to the comic coming out, even though it was a street dance. And the coolest, the funniest part was I do my stuff and it worked. And I could, and I mean, they got speakers. There's 10,000 people lined up in the street watching this thing. And they got speakers and you could just hear this rush of laughter, which is cool, right? Everything's great. Everything's amazing. And then they told me, and you know, my dad told me that I'd made it because I was opening for Gary Stewart. And, but they told me that I could have all the beer that I wanted, but I got to make sure that Gary also has a beer going, right? And then they told me that I had to do the encore. You know, I had to walk out and go, you guys want to hear some more? And then he's supposed to come out and play Empty Glass, right? So nobody tells me, like I know that he's a drinker, but nobody tells me that he's this much of a drinker, okay? So, I mean, I'm literally opening beers and handing them to him, and in between, you know, a breath, you know, an eighth note, he's slamming the beer completely, wham, throwing it down, wham, throwing it down. Well, I'm trying to keep up with my legend, my hero. So, and if you ever saw Gary, the later on that he throughout the set, the songs would suddenly start running together, and they didn't even sound like they're real songs, right? So he plays all the way through Empty Glass, and which was supposed to be the encore song, and I don't recognize it. I don't think Gary recognized it, and but I have it somewhere on VHS somewhere. But I literally come out, y'all, after he comes off the stage, and I'm like, never knew when I'm a nanny, many more. And I go, you guys want to hear the more? And you can't hear it, but his manager goes, he's already in the limousine. And I go, but he's already in the damn limousine. Good night. And then, you know, out of that, other gigs came. And then there was a guy named Rick Gutierrez, a comedian who was a buddy of mine. He tours with Fluffy now. And but Ricky was like, hey, man, I got offered this thing with George Strait in San Antonio. Do you want to come and do it with me? Because they want me to go up in between each act. And I was like, yeah, man. Are you kidding? Dream come true. And so, and I looked, you know, the part. And so, you know, they hired me for, I don't know, 4 or 5 more other dates into 99 and 2000. It was kind of cool. So, yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Now, thinking about that time period, just you being you, did you ever, you know, with like, say, the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, did you ever have people thinking you were doing a character and not being you? You know, because Larry the Cable Guy, all that kind of stuff was out. And that sort of Southern humor was big at that point.
Right. So, well, I was actually the 5th guy signed with the management team of the Blue Collar Tour.
Okay.
So, so now you advance it a little further, and it's 2000. It had to be after 9/11. So, a little bit after 2001. Right. So going into 2002, they had heard about me, you know, I'm still out there hitting the things, and they had me come audition. And Cowboy Bill sounds like a made up name, but it's the name my grandfather, it's the nickname my grandfather gave me. Okay. And I wasn't even going to use it. But when I did the radio call in 2 weeks before I started stand up, you know, I wrote this whole script for me and this DJ named JD Ryan on KSCS here in Dallas and Fort Worth to do this call-in on Wednesday nights. And I was supposed to call in from a big beer joint, a big dance hall called Cowboys in Arlington. And JD's on the phone, and he goes, we have Cowboy Bill calling in from Cowboys in Arlington. Well, my grandfather called me that till I was 6 years old when he died, right? So it kind of fit, and I knew it wasn't a character. But, and I had no idea that Larry the Cable Guy was a character that he made. So I went up as Cowboy Bill, which I really think has been a double-edged sword. Like I toured under that name for 20 years and dropped it, I guess, 6 years ago, went back to my maiden name. But yeah, exactly what you're talking about. And so sometimes I think that it did hurt because I think people thought I was just trying to be that guy,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also you've been doing. I mean, I've been playing music a long time too, and the way the business has changed. Did your advertising background help you at all navigate? And I'm sure there was a point like I had where you're like, what is, you got to do all this stuff on the internet now? There's no more, all of the old channels kind of went away. And it's like, this is a brand new business model. You've got to learn to adapt. You can bitch about it, but you got to jump in or just go away.
Yeah, it's and I'm still having to learn that, it's funny because now there's internet sensations out there in our business all over the place. A guy does 15 minutes, not even that, a 2-minute bit, and sometimes not even that, 45-second bit, and suddenly he's selling tickets. And when right before the pandemic, I had 2 specials that came out on Amazon Prime. One was called Standing in the Middle, and the other one's called The Nutcracker, a Christmas story based on my vasectomy.
That sounds like a good one.
So we're all excited. My wife and I, we self-financed it. So we got them out, and we got them out on Amazon Prime. And then the whole world shuts down in March.
I thought you meant the vasectomy that you and your wife
Financed it.
That we financed too, as well.
Finally got it paid off this year.
She was not in the room, but yeah, she was happy to see it. So, but we had these 2 things out, but I only had 40,000 followers on Facebook, and we were excited about that it's coming out, but we were going to go out and do this thing, and then the world shuts down in March, and I'd already hired a marketing team to promote these 2 specials, right? Because I didn't really know what I was doing on social media, and they were like, "You need to do a Zoom show." And I'm like, what the hell's a Zoom show? And they said, well, you do your act, but there's no audience. And I said, fellas, that's called a lecture. Right? And they said, well, turn on your computer and at least talk into it. Go on Facebook Live. And I said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And then 2 days later, my wife was watching Meet the Press, and I call it Meet the Depressed. Right? And they were saying they were going to be shut down for the next 7 to 10 years. Well, I'm 50 years old, man. That puts me out of the business completely. 7 to 10 years. I'm 60. I can't restart this thing at that point. So I'm out working in the grass yard like I always was during the pandemic. And I just had my computer out there and I flipped it on. And at 4 o'clock, I turned it on and just talked into it. I didn't talk about hoaxes or who was right or who was wrong, or I just talked about how to get through life with a smile on your face. That we're all going to be hit with adversity throughout our lives. And even after the pandemic, you're still going to go through something, but you're just not going to have 335 million people going through it at the same time. And so we did it the next day. We ended up calling it the 4 o'clock daily talk. And we did that. We did 24 hours on Facebook straight, just to show people that they have to get through a minute sometimes to get through an hour to get through a day, which is something that I learned with working with these kids that we work with Cowboys Who Care, where we work with kids with cancer and other life-threatening illnesses, right? So sometimes you just got to get through the minute to get through the hour to get through the day. Mm-hmm. And so we did 24 hours, and we went from 40,000 followers to 400,000 followers.
Wow.
In like 8 months. And then, everybody went back to work, and then it becomes another lesson that you got to learn. Well, how do we attract people now that not everybody is sitting at home watching their phone and their computer? And, and TikTok wasn't even a thing then.
Right.
So about 9 months ago, we got on TikTok for the first time ever now it is just short staccato notes that you put out there on TikTok. If you put in a minute and a half, nobody's going to watch it hardly, because nobody sticks that long on TikTok. So it goes back to what you're saying. You have to adapt, but people have been having to do that forever. I mean, the guy that had the pencil thought he had a hell of an idea to the guy that came along and had a typewriter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to adapt. I had a guy tell me the other day, he goes, I'm just too old to learn any of this shit. I go, well, then you might as well just quit then. Because there's all kinds of people that are going to charge you out there, but you got to figure out how to do a lot of the stuff yourself.
That's true. Very true. And the, it's weird how you have to, and nowadays it seems like you have to pivot every 6 months or something because something new's coming out. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, you're talking about the TikTok thing. I wonder if the hour comedy special's ever going to become passe because people's attention spans have just becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. Like old dudes like me are always going to love them. But if I wonder, 10 years down the road, if anybody's going to want to sit down. I mean, I guess if you went out, because live comedy is completely different than watching it on a device. But I just wonder if the hour specials that people watch on Netflix and stuff, if they'll even have the capacity to sit through an hour, in 10 years.
Well, the beauty of it is I'll be 66 years old at that point.
Right. And won't give a shit either way.
Won't give a shit. So I can go watch my old tapes.
Right. And I've noticed that a lot of comedians are taking all of their old specials that they own and getting somebody to chop them up and put them on TikTok in 45 second blast.
Yeah, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that, old guys like me, we signed distribution deals with these companies. And then, you put a clip of yourself that's so beautifully shot. And then you realize, well, the distribution company still has the rights actually to it. So they flag you and your YouTube page or any of that other stuff. And it squall anything that you got going. So it's a constant fight on just trying to be relevant out there. But that's the way it is with every artist.
Yeah, it's just a different angle, different struggle. I didn't really think about that because, I'm 52 and the same.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell him how old you are. JD loves telling you guys how old he is.
I'm just saying, from the same age bracket. But yeah, if you were working 25 years ago, a lot of stuff you probably don't own, because there wasn't a lot of people doing it on their own back then. There weren't as many avenues, you didn't have studios in your apartment. You didn't have phones with great cameras. You had to go, invest.
Yeah, like you really had to rely on somebody else to put that stuff out.
Yeah.
There were so many channels and gatekeepers. But, I mean, let's face it, there's still gatekeepers.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did during the pandemic was, like I said, I've been writing little songs since I was 5 years old, right? And here in Dallas and Fort Worth, I couldn't get any of these local singers, songwriters to write with me. They all knew me from comedy, and they kind of, I guess they just kind of had their nose up to the whole idea. You go tell jokes, we write songs, right? Mm-hmm. So I started writing with a guy out of Nashville, Will Southern, I guess 3 or 4 years ago. We wrote a couple of great tunes. One's called 400 Horses. It was in the time when every song that came out was about how great it is being in a small town.
Right.
Friday night football game and the whole. Well, I grew up in a small town. The only thing that I was like, nobody who's writing these songs ever grew up in a fucking small town. Because when you're 17 years old, the only thing that you want out of a small town is just that, out.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So, you're not looking forward to Friday night football when you're 18. You actually think to yourself, my God, if I'm here when I'm 19, something went wrong.
Yeah.
Now, when you're 29 and you move back, there's a different feeling there.
Right.
But to have Friday night football and I can't wait and it was like, give me a break. So I went to Will and I said, I have a hook and it's 400 horses to get out of this one horse town. And I want to write a song about two kids that just load up in a car and they're like, the only escape is the freeway, right? Is the interstate. And so we wrote that and then I wrote a couple other things with a couple other people and they seemed to be kind of cool songs. And then I wrote a song with this kind of a weird connection. Might take me a second to get there, but I wrote a song with the band leader for Frank Sinatra, Vinny Falcone.
Okay.
And Vinny and I was headlining in Las Vegas at Excalibur, and I got invited to go to. I said it's a far stretch to get there, but I got invited to a lunch with Rich Little, very famous impressionist, right? And I go there, and I'm sitting at the table with Vince Falcone, and he and I, we got along like thieves, man. And I said, I wrote this song on the day my mother passed away called What Makes a Man a Man. And I don't have any music to it. I'm a drummer. I got a melody in my head. Not sure where we're going to go with it. I'm going to go with it. And we, at this lunch, he said, well, tell me the words. And I told him. And so we co-wrote this song together, which was cool. But nobody really, even in town, would give me like the time of day, really. Mm-hmm. And then I met a guy named David Banning on a cruise ship when I was working a cruise ship. And he was there for a songwriting a cruise. I guess people that were writing songs were also on this thing. And he's from Dallas, and he's written with a lot of people, Harlan Howard and the whole thing. And then suddenly he asked me to write. And then when the pandemic happened, I started taking writes with everybody. And so I signed a 1-song deal with Myriad Publishing in Nashville about 4 months ago, and nothing's happened yet. But that's, again, I love the word because I use it a lot too, but you just got to pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like, what's cruise life like when you're doing comedy? I'm sure initially it's fun. Did you do a lot of them? Because I would imagine
it was never fun.
Right. A good paycheck, I guess, or steady.
It was a solid paycheck. So by the time 2009 rolled around, and up to then, I got to be the opening act for George Jones for 2.5 years, and I was on the CMT Most Wanted Live tour. That was all in like 2002, 2003, 2004, and then everything kind of plateaued like it does in people's careers, or at least it did in mine. And by 2009, between the comedy clubs changing their booking philosophy, and suddenly white acts, no other way to put it, were kind of pushed to the side, and they went more with urban acts, household name, and hypnotists. So guys like me that were, earning a pretty decent living, a lot of those dates went away. And then Enron happened. Remember that in 2008?
Yeah.
Great financial crash. But that's also where 33% of my business was corporate entertainment, right? And so that all went away. And I was almost bankrupt again, twice now in the business. So it was 2009. And it was an agent that wanted me to send me out on a cruise ship. And I was reluctant till 2010. And I went out there, in the first 2 weeks, I got through it. The third week I was out there, I literally bawled like a baby for 2 days on the ship in my little cabin because, I thought I had my shot and it's over. And what I didn't know was that I found an audience out there, a loyal audience that I'd never found before in just comedy clubs. I was on Carnival, so it was middle class. It wasn't old people. It was my age people. It was people in their 40s and early 50s taking their family vacation out there, And it was completely different. It's not, because used to, that's where you take a career to die.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I spent the next 8 years doing heavily cruises. And then the pandemic put an end to it. And then I've only been on one cruise since 2020. Since March of 2020, I've only been on one cruise, and I plan on never going back.
Were you on that one that was stuck out there forever?
No, I was fortunate that I got sent home enough early enough. But I know some, I don't think there were any entertainers that got stuck out there for a long time. There were a lot of crew members that got stuck on there forever.
Yeah.
Man, can you imagine that too? Because we've done cruises before, and the boat, daily, just seems to get smaller. And you first get on, holy shit, this thing's gigantic. Day
Yeah.
2, day 3, it just keeps smaller and smaller. And you've got your, if it's the 5th day you're getting off, when you're getting off the boat, and you're looking towards that day. And I can't
Yeah.
imagine them going, "Nah, you got another couple of weeks out here. Sorry." I'd go insane.
Well, the beauty of it being a stand-up is that we only were there for a week at a time. So I didn't have to do a month out there. So I'd do a week, and then I go home for a week, and then I do a week. But then I realized at some point that I was angry for the first 2 or 3 days that I was home. Then I'd finally feel good about being at home again. And then I'd be mad before I head towards the ship again. And and people are like, "Don't you have a good time?" No, I really didn't want to hang out with passengers, right? Because as a comedian, Jesus, all they do is go, "Hey, I got a joke for you." Nah, you really don't.
Yeah.
And they expect you to be the life of whatever party they're throwing on.
Yeah, and
Make me
you're
laugh.
like, this is make me laugh, joke boys. So but it made me stronger as a comic. The audiences were great, and then during the pandemic, I told my wife, I said, at this point in my career, with everything that I've done, I want to see if the audience wants to come see me, and not me go see the audience anymore.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
And so I want to see if they want to buy hard tickets to come see me. And so I could have taken the easy route and stayed on the ships and made a decent living, really good living. And but I decided coming out of this thing that, again, it's time to set fire to another damn boat.
Wow.
Literally this time.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious as to 24 hours of Facebook. How did you do that? Did you just carry around? Did you stay awake for 24 hours? What was this?
I stayed awake for 24 hours. And
Are you still recovering from that?
no, and this was almost 2 years ago now. No, I really enjoyed it. I did it right here from the loft. This is a detached room that's above our garage, and I got my drum kit, and I got Red Dead Redemption PlayStation and my full-size arcade game here and stuff. But I remember back when we were in the lockdown, everybody's like, because I really took it that was God trying to tell us, "Hey, I'm going to shake up your Etch-a-Sketch, and it's time for you to design a new route. But you think you have one planned out, and maybe you ought to explore these other talents that I gave you that you seem to not do anything with." I really took it very personal. But that's what I told him during the thing, that 1 hour, like I had a guy on 1 hour call me and give me a 20-minute lesson on playing the guitar. Like, I write songs and I hold the guitar, but I can't play the guitar. So on the Facebook Live, he gave me the 20-minute lesson. And then one, we did like who was the Al Capone Vault? Remember that opening when they opened up Al Capone's Vault? Well, we did that with Rosetta Stone. Like, I bought Rosetta Stone Spanish like 12 years ago and never opened the damn thing. So we opened it on Facebook Live, and turned out that the code that I had expired, so it wasn't even good anymore. So but I had my comic buddy Alex Ramundo call me and give me a 20-minute Spanish lesson, because I know the cuss words because where I grew up.
Right.
But I didn't know how to put together a normal sentence other than "I got to go pee."
Yeah.
So when did it start and when did it end? Did you start at first
Started
thing
at
in the morning?
noon and went all the way to noon.
Wow.
And
Did things start getting a little freaky at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m.?
No, at 4 a.m., I told him that I had to conserve my voice. So at 4 a.m., I turned the phone over my shoulder, and I set it to my head, my hands, so you can see I'm still working, and the TV. And for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, people watched me play Red Dead Redemption. And we averaged, like, it was stupid, y'all. It was like 550 people an hour that was watching me play Red Dead Redemption at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Hey, man, it was a pandemic. People needed to be entertained for sure.
Yeah. So we also did movie nights here. So you can't show the movie because of copyright.
Right.
But I'd have I'd be sitting right here, and I had the TV set up right behind me with the video going of whatever movie is there with my head in the way. So it's just in background, which you can get away with. And I would just comment on, and I had a mirror set up on the other side so I could see what was going on in the thing. And I would just comment on, so we do movie night here on Saturday nights too. And I would comment on, like we did Independence Day, which is hilarious. One of the worst movies ever.
I love that movie.
I know. America loved the movie. It made $1 billion.
Yes.
But when you watch it with any sort of critical eye, you're like, wait, this is probably one of the big. Okay, so we've been waiting since humanity for other life forms to show up, right? One finally flies over, what was it, Los Angeles? So a size of Los Angeles ship is over there, and the girlfriend still got to go work the strip club. Because we don't know if the aliens brought folding money. and like just a plot point, just to get a plot point going. You know, at one point, remember, they got a hold of the president, and he's like, luckily, he told me what they're going to do. Really?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, this is how we're going to pull it off. Yeah.
Yeah, this is how we're going to pull it off. Luckily, he told me exactly what they're going to do while he had a hold of my throat. I could read his mind. Okay. Well, that advanced the plot point pretty simply.
That's hysterical.
You're breaking my heart. I loved this.
All that noise. Okay. All the noise going in the tunnel. All the noise. And she finds one open door. Her and her kid.
Yeah.
And she hollers at the dog, Boomer! And the dog comes jumping into the door.
Yeah.
And then a rush of 1,000,000,000 degrees goes there, and everybody's okay.
Yeah, she's fine.
She's in a closet door that was left open.
Yeah, it's fucking great. Yes.
I love you. I'm gonna have to hug you when I see you.
I was just the right age at the time. I was very early teens and just thought it was cool.
Yeah, when's the last time you
Not
seen
just
it?
you. It made It literally made $1 billion in today's money. So yeah, don't
Andrew
feel bad.
Keegan in it. Andrew Keegan was hot back then. Yeah, I watched it with the kids, I think, about a year ago.
You still like it?
Yeah, because it was like so big when I was a kid, you know?
Lord.
I don't know. You're right. It's the more you say that you're right, it's just a terrible.
No, let's say it out loud.
Okay, so before we let you go, when's the first time? I mean, I know you said that your dad would listen to my grandpa, but what's your own personal Papa Willie story? When's the first time you remember hearing a Papa Willie song or about him? And just wanted to ask.
Well, first of all, I've never smoked pot, but I've always told my kids that if I ever smoke pot, it would be with Willie. Okay. I've been in show business for 26 years. Angel flying too
Why
close to
haven't
the
you
ground.
smoked weed yet? Just because you want to wait for Papa Willie?
It was illegal here, forever.
Yeah.
And being a father, the idea of getting busted with my kids, and I had too much to lose. Way too much to lose, man.
You just didn't try it though? Not one time?
Mm-mm. But I've never had a cigarette or a cup of coffee.
Have you tried salvia?
Have I tried what?
Heroin? No.
Heroin. Yeah, I just did some black tar heroin. It's
But I will not
You
smoke
wouldn't
pot or
think
drink
you'd have-
coffee.
and these are my real teeth. These are
Wait a
not like
minute.
fake or anything, but you wouldn't think you'd have this with black tar heroin.
We can't gloss over no coffee. Why no coffee?
My mom and dad were addicted to coffee and cigarettes. So my job on Saturday was to clean the coffee station, with the grounds and the whole thing, and the ashtrays every effing Saturday of my life.
That'll do it.
Kid. And it was a scarce straight program, man. Even to this day, I can't stand the smell of coffee.
Okay. What about Coca-Cola? You drink sodas and
Yeah, I do
Coke?
like a Dr. Pepper. Let me go ahead and give that endorsement with real sugar. Not the aspartame, but real
I
sugar.
haven't seen that. Okay. All right.
But but as far as your grandfather's music, first of all,
oh yeah.
I have seen Honeysuckle Rose about 1 billion times.
Okay.
And Angel Flying Too Close to the Ground is the song I had played at my mother's funeral. And that it is still one of the greatest songs ever. And his version of it. And, I've never gotten to meet him. I have gotten to meet a lot of big names in this business. But, he was always my bucket list guy. And definitely on Mount Rushmore of this business.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. And funny too.
Yeah.
And what?
And funny as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All those old
Yeah,
dudes
yeah.
were. That's what makes me. He almost had to be funny if you're of the early Grand Ole Opry era. They were kind of like song and dance, man. You'd sing in. They could tell jokes, do a little acting, whatever. But they all seem to be hilarious.
Well, that's since the pandemic, I like I said, I really jumped into songwriting. While so I've written 7 scripts, full-length movie scripts, and I never really tried to push them out to the light of day. And since the pandemic, I really got out there, and we just had the same conversation with somebody the other day, a big-time agent in LA. And he's like, well, you really should try to stick to comedy. And I go, you realize 45 years ago that every comedian sang, danced, acted, wrote, directed. You realize that, right? All of them did. And it's only in the last 40 years that we say you can only be this and you can't be this.
That's a good point.
I don't think it should be one or the other, but whatever.
Well, that's part of the internet is breaking some of that down. There's so many avenues to do it for yourself now.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Hey, thank you for doing this with us.
Yeah,
This
man,
has
this
been
was great.
Sure. Can I plug one thing?
Plug away.
everything. Yeah.
My wife and I run a charity called Cowboys Who Care Foundation. We provide cowboy hats to kids with cancer and other life-threatening illnesses. We started about 10 years ago with a young lady named Ashley Miller. She was 12 when she was diagnosed, and her mom and dad asked me to put my name on a golf tournament to raise some money for her. And we did. And we got to know her, and then her cancer goes into remission, and it came back. And she lost her battle with cancer in June of 2011. We knew we wanted to help and didn't know how. And one day I just Googled kids with cancer images, kind of opened it up to the universe, and saw all these big, bright, beautiful smiles and bald heads. And in the mirror, I could see my cowboy hat. And that's when it hit me. Well, these kids need cowboy hats. What 7-year-old wants to wear a wig? But what 7-year-old wouldn't want to be a cowboy or cowgirl? So I came home and I told my wife, I said, I think God's telling us to deliver cowboy hats. And so we formed Cowboys Who Care, a nonprofit, a 501c3. And I got with Resistol, whose sister company is Stetson, but that's all owned by Hatco. And between us and Resistol, we've delivered a little over 10,000 hats. And
wow.
And you use my favorite word, pivot. We had to pivot during the pandemic because we can no longer go to the hospitals to deliver them. So now we have a new program called Request a Hat. So if anybody's listening and you know of a child, God forbid, that has a cancer or life-threatening illness, jump on our website, cowboyswhocare.org, hit the button that says Request a Hat, and just fill out the form. And as long as they fall under our small umbrella, and that's cancer and life-threatening illness, we'll be happy to send that child a brand new hat, free of charge, no shipping, no handling, getting on a mailing list. We're not sending you over to China, and you're getting a real deal. You're getting a real Resistol hat for the kid because we just want to put a smile on their face. And we're starting to get back into hospitals, and we do have a fundraiser on September the 19th, our golf tournament. So if anybody out there wants to be kind enough to, donate to either our auction items or stuff that we can give away, we should really appreciate it.
That's awesome.
Cool.
And we'll put all those links in the description when we put this thing out so everybody will be able to click on that and make it easy for them.
Well, I love what you're doing. I love your set and everything else you got going. I'm doing a podcast here. So if y'all want to reverse the thing and do it on a Wednesday, we can go the other way.
Yeah, let's do
that
it.
sounds like a
That'd
blast.
be fun.
Okay. You pick a Wednesday, send it to me, and we'll put this thing together.
Yeah, I think once we get to the next couple of weeks, because we're playing the following week, I think probably 3 weeks out, we'll probably be free.
Well, if you're bored and you want to hear the kind of stuff that I write, it's on my website, williamleemartin.com.
Okay.
And, I've probably written 1,500 songs, and 9 of them are pretty good.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Good.
We'll pull that up in the van next time we're out.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And it's so great talking to you both.
William Lee Martin is my favorite comedian.
Yeah, that was a good one. He was hilarious. Love that guy. Enjoy your groceries.
Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.
Did we cheers yet?
Enjoy your cigarette.